So here we are into November, which means it's time to answer questions from $5 patrons asked in the month of October, just like I do every month. If you'd like to ask me anything, then just become a patron at the $5 level and post a comment to the post for November, which is linked in the description. Everyone gets to ask one question. If you ask more than one, like Jason Maltz did, I'll answer more at my own discretion, so since there are only 3 questions this month, why not? His first question is, can you tell us about your upbringing, education, and how you became such a libertarian? The short answer is no, because quite frankly, I don't really know the full answer myself. I basically agreed with everything about libertarian philosophy before I even understood it. I can point you to a few influences, like reading Robert Heinlein's The Moon is a Harsh Mistress in my teenage years. I guess if I had to pick any one thing that got me going, it'd be that. But it was really a long, gradual process, longer than I'd really care to admit, although if I'd had the internet at my disposal, it would have happened much more quickly, because I would have instantly found the libertarian answers to all the questions I had, and they would have been much more satisfying to me than the answers I was hearing from Democrats and Republicans, both in the real world and in the news media. And given all that information, I don't see how it could have ended up being anything else. But when you're talking about having a full grasp of libertarian philosophy, the Knapp and Rothbard and all that, it really wasn't until the last few years of the 20th century that I really got a good hold of it. So Jason asks his second question, what's the best argument against libertarianism you've heard? It's an odd question because if I'd heard any compelling arguments against it, I wouldn't be a libertarian. There are arguments that seem compelling on the surface, but they very quickly fall apart when examined. There have been a few bizarro, unlikely hypotheticals where you can argue that an act of aggression is necessary to prevent a greater amount of harm, but a necessity defense is permitted by libertarian principles as long as there was no other option open to you. Just to try and get ideas for what arguments might be best, I Googled it, and the first result was this really hilarious Quora thread where someone asks that question and people come back with the same old long-debunked crap. I've put a link in the description so you can see it for yourself. Probably the most compelling, I think, would be the subject of externalities, but we have the solution for that. Internalize the externalities so they're subject to market forces. If nothing else, it's something ripe for an entrepreneur to make a profit solving. And I mean, it's not like government has come up with any effective solutions. Certainly not Pigovian taxes. I'm linking to an episode of Econ Talk with Mike Munger that does a good job of covering externalities. And I mean, really, what is government but one giant externality itself? But back to the question, remember the only thing libertarianism is the idea that you shouldn't initiate force against others to get your way. It's really hard to argue against that. And finally, Josh Havens asks, I don't agree with this, but what's wrong with requiring gun purchasers to go through a safety course before buying a gun? Shouldn't we require gun owners to know what they're doing before obtaining a weapon? Let me go back to my favorite hypothetical. That small woman with a mountain of an ex-boyfriend who doesn't understand the meaning of the word restraining order. She's afraid for her life, so she goes to get a gun, only to be told that she has to go through a safety course in order to get one. And there's one next week that has free slots she can sign up for. So when Eᴛဃᴇᴜᴍ comes busting down her door that very night, how is she going to defend herself? She can't. He might even have a gun himself, not exactly being restrained to getting it legally, but even if he doesn't, there's no way she can hold her own against him. So she gets raped and murdered that very night. Now let me say that everyone who gets a gun should take a safety course, or at least go down to the firing range and get familiar with it and how it works. As any self-defense expert will tell you, any weapon you don't know how to use belongs to the other guy. But many gun shops have a firing range she can go to when she buys it, and at least get some experience shooting it so she doesn't have to be caught completely flat-footed when he breaks in. Okay, that's it for October's questions. We'll be back next month with more. Until then, stay strong and be free.